I warmly welcome you all to this session on iNaturalist 101 with Alison. Um, First, I will introduce myself very briefly. My name is Ramdayal Vaishnav. I'm working with the Naturalist School as Head of Citizen Science, and I'm also working with IUCN Citizen Science Task Force and at Citizen Science Global Partnership. We'll be giving you information about two of our recent biobudgets, which we have one we have done and the other one we are preparing now. But that we can do in the end. For now, I would like to introduce you to the speaker of the session, and I'm very, very excited to introduce you all to Alison, Director of Outreach Program at iNaturalist. So Alison is passionate about deepening connections to nature, bringing people together and advancing biodiversity conservation through community science events and campaigns that use iNaturalist. Alison formerly worked was as co-director of the Center for Biodiversity and Community Science at the California Academy of Sciences, where she co-founded the City Nature Challenge. Alison's background is in intertidal ecology, and like it feels very exciting to me because, introducing one of the persons who was the brain behind City Nature Challenge, and we, especially in India, are very, very excited about it. It's kind of like, that annual festival which we all, eagerly wait. So I'll give it over to Alison.
Thanks so much. Yeah, hi everybody. Alison from iNaturalist, Director of Outreach Programs. I am going to share my screen so I can get my talk started. There we go. Perfect. Great. Glad you all can see it. So I am going to give a bit of an introduction to iNaturalist. I'll talk a little bit about just what it is and how to use it. If you're relatively new to iNaturalist, I'll talk also a little bit about the impacts of using iNaturalist and the impacts that iNaturalist has had for science and conservation. And then I'll move a little bit into what's the next step? If you're already making observations on iNaturalist, what else can you do to kind of level up your use of iNaturalist? So to start off with, as I'm sure all of you know, one of the major challenges of our time right now is the global biodiversity crisis. There are currently over 1 million species that are threatened with extinction this century due to things like climate change and habitat loss. And so two of the things out of many things, but two of the things that we need to help address this challenge are one, more people who care about and advocate for and take action for nature. And then two, just more information about where species are to help guide conservation. You can't protect things if you don't know where they are. So biodiversity needs people, and people need biodiversity. And we and biodiversity all we need more people in more places that are caring about and gathering more data about more species. So how do we do this? How do we address this challenge? So iNaturalist is trying to address this by being a platform where people can easily identify and learn more about the species around them, and at the same time, gather critical biodiversity data. So iNaturalist is engaging people in nature and science. Just by taking a photograph, people can get instant identifications of the species that they encounter. And that observation, their encounter, that personal encounter with a species also becomes a data point. And then all these individual encounters with species is helping to democratize biodiversity science and connect people to nature. It's creating the world's largest data set on biodiversity. And those data are being used to answer scientific questions and to inform conservation efforts worldwide. But it all just starts with a personal encounter with nature. So starting with that first point, just how iNaturalist works. So iNaturalist is easy and fun to use, or at least we hope it is. And it has features that hopefully keep encouraging people to keep contributing. So generally, how does it work? At its simplest, what you're doing is you're documenting evidence of an organism. So a plant, an animal, some type of fungi, things like that. At its easiest, you use your phone with the iNaturalist app installed to take a photo of a species that you encounter. You can also take photos with your phone and add them into the app later to make observations. If you like using a regular camera, you can upload photos on the iNaturalist website. You can also record sounds as evidence, things like bird songs or frog calls. But at its very simplest, kind of getting new people onto iNaturalist, the easiest thing is to use the app and to take photos in the app itself. So when you take a photo, you get a suggestion for an identification, and that suggestion is based on your photo itself and where you took it. So we have a trained like species suggestion model that's part of iNaturalist. Your photo does not have to be great, but it does help to focus on one organism. You can also add your own identification if you don't want to use our suggestions as well. There's a place to always add your own ID. And then the data associated with that photo that you just took, like where you are and what day it is also recorded as part of that observation. So you want to make sure you're sharing your location in the app. It also improves your identification suggestions in the app itself if you're sharing your location. And we find for a lot of people that are kind of new to this idea of like putting names to things that they see in the outside world, that like having those suggestions are really nice because it kind of gives them an instantly something that they can call this like new species that they've encountered as well. So those species suggestions are really nice for people that are just kind of getting into their nature journey out there in the world. Then once you upload that observation, the community on iNaturalist can confirm that identification or correct it if it needs to be corrected. So here's on this screen, here's what an observation looks like on the iNaturalist.org website once it's uploaded. When the identification is confirmed by someone else in the iNaturalist community, it's considered what we call a research grade observation. And iNaturalist shares those research grade observations with other databases that are used really extensively for science and conservation, like GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. So what began just as a photo, just as like a personal encounter with nature, is now a data point. It's a record that like this particular species was seen at this location on this day. And those sorts of information, what we call species occurrence records, help scientists understand things like how species and places are changing through time. And it also helps people who manage and protect species and places make more informed conservation decisions by having that information as well. So generally, making good observations on iNaturalist, this is kind of like the quick overview of just what to keep in mind. You want to make sure you're taking a clear, close photo of a wild organism. iNaturalist is really for wild things instead of captive or cultivated things. You want to make sure you have an accurate location, and you want to upload it with an identification of some sort, either one that you've used from our suggestions or that you've entered yourself as well. And this is just kind of the basis of making a good observation on iNaturalist. So turning over to the iNaturalist community, there are millions of iNaturalist members. And the iNaturalist community is made up of scientists. It's made up of like amateur experts, so people who've taught themselves a lot about, particular groups or particular places. Like if you know any birders in your life, folks like that. There are land managers on iNaturalist, there's students, there's park rangers, there's outdoor enthusiasts, there's people that are just, wanting to learn a little bit more about the species around them. It's really a community for anyone who's interested in nature to share their observations and help identify other people's finds. Anyone can submit observations to iNaturalist, and also everyone is welcome to help with identifications as well. So some of the features that I personally find really fun on iNaturalist and keep me coming back and using iNaturalist, I've been using iNaturalist now for almost 15 years. One is that you can keep track of everything you've ever seen. So you can see a map of where you've made observations in the world. This is my map of observations on iNaturalist. It's really fun to like go back and look at those observations and think about those places that you were, and think about those species that you saw in those places as well. So it's fun to be able to see your map of observations around the world. You can also see all the species that you've ever seen. Similar, going back to the birders, how birders will keep a life list of birds. This is your life list of every species you've ever seen, which is pretty fun as well. So iNaturalist shows you your species list from most observed to least observed. So this is my species list here. I'm a marine biologist by training, so you can see most of my most observed species are marine species, but I always get really excited when I get to add, when I see my number of species go up and I get a new species in my species life list as well. You can also explore all the observations that other people have made on iNaturalist. And this is really great for like getting to know the species that you might see on your next hike or on your next vacation. If there's like a species you've always wanted to see, you can look on iNaturalist and see where other people have seen those. It's also just really nice to learn more about the species that might be in your neighborhood or in like a little local park that you walk through on your way to work or on your way to school every day. So the fact that you can explore everybody else's observations is a really nice way to learn more about the species in places that you're interested in. iNaturalist also has projects that you can contribute to, and anyone can make a project on iNaturalist. So you can contribute to a project. You could be helping a researcher answer questions, scientific questions. You could help conservation organizations learn more about species and places. Here's just one example of a project on iNaturalist, this Pollination DC. This is run by the Smithsonian and the University of DC, and they're looking at all the wild species that use these like little small community gardens in the Washington, D.C. area as habitat. So a project will give you all this information about, the contributions that have been made in this project. So you can see that over 1,000 people have contributed more than 4,000 observations from community gardens in Washington, D.C., documenting almost 900 species. Projects will show you the most recent observations. So you get a feed of like recent things that people have observed in the areas that your project is looking at. Projects also have leaderboards, so you can see who's made the most observations and who's found the most species, which can be motivating for competitive people. You can also see what the most observed species are in projects as well. And you can also see the map of observations. In this case, this project is restricted to all these little tiny community gardens all over Washington, D.C., but you can see those observations on the map coming in from all these little community gardens. So like I said, anyone can start projects on iNaturalist. You could start your own project and have members of the iNaturalist community help answer questions that you might have or gather more information about places that you care about as well. So projects are open for anybody. So kind of moving on from like how iNaturalist works and kind of what are some of the fun features of iNaturalist, I want to move into how using iNaturalist makes an impact. And iNaturalist is accelerating science and conservation, both through like individual engagement and action and through the use of iNaturalist data as well. So kind of focusing in on some of these impacts. First, just thinking about like individual use of iNaturalist. iNaturalist does help people deepen their understanding of and connection to nature. It encourages people to get outside, to slow down, to be curious, and to notice all the species around them. Like I often hear from people like, I've walked through this park every single day, but I've never like looked under a log and realized that there were salamanders in this park. Like I never knew that because I've never taken the time to stop and look. But like using iNaturalist gives people that reason to stop and really pay attention and be curious about what the things are around them. People also learn more about the species they encounter. They get identifications using iNaturalist. iNaturalist also has a bunch of other information about species as well, so people can learn more about species using iNaturalist. It also helps people interested in nature connect to other people. So they can connect online where people can interact on people's observations or through projects. The New York Times called iNaturalist the nicest place on the internet. But people also have a chance to connect in person as well. Many organizations hold events like BioBlitzes that bring people together to make observations in one particular place. And we also have lots of examples of people that come together on their own to make a difference in their own communities using iNaturalist and iNaturalist data for conservation and stewardship. So one example of that is this Oric Avenue restoration project, and this is in Minnesota here in the United States. This one woman, Heather, noticed that bumblebees were declining in her neighborhood, particularly in this spot where there were invasive species that were taking over. So she worked with her neighbors. She was like, I know how I can make a difference. I can use iNaturalist. So she worked with her neighbors to restore this plot of land. They're working on removing invasive species and replanting native species, and they're documenting their progress using iNaturalist. So they were documenting the species that were there before restoration, and then what species have returned and are attracted to the native species that they've been replanting since they started restoring the land. So this is just one example of a person who realized that she could make a difference in her own community through using iNaturalist and working with her neighbors. iNaturalist also supports biodiversity science. One way that we support science is through individual observations that are important. So there have been hundreds of species that were not described by science found through iNaturalist. This little mantis on this slide, for example, this is from Australia. It was first documented on iNat, and it was not described. It now has been described, and it was named Anemia nat. So it's actually iNat for short. When you talk about the genus and species name, you often abbreviate the genus just to the first letter. So it's iNat, honoring iNaturalist, which is pretty cool. There's also been hundreds of lost species rediscovered on iNaturalist. So these are species that were thought to be either extinct, like in particular places, or potentially extinct altogether, that were refound by iNaturalist members, like this hawk in Papua New Guinea that hadn't been documented since 1969, when this person finally rediscovered it. And I wanted to give you a recent example of a species that was found on iNaturalist that was undescribed by science. I'm going to show this little video here that our communications manager put together. So let me get this going.
When we explore nature, we often look up at towering mountains, soaring birds, branches reaching for the sky. But in March 2024 in Big Bend National Park, Deb Manley chose to look down instead. She spotted a fuzzy little plant, photographed it, and uploaded those images to iNaturalist. There, the online community of naturalists quickly realized that this was not just any plant. Deb had documented the first new plant species found in a US national park in nearly 50 years. Meet the woolly devil, scientific name Ovicula biradiata. It's an entirely new genus in the sunflower family, and it's named for its fuzzy coating and its horn-like florets. It was also found near a place in the park known as Devil's Den. Some community members had seen this plant before, but when Deb uploaded her observation to iNaturalist, it kicked off a formal species description process. Pretty soon after, more people started uploading sightings of this plant to iNaturalist, immediately showing that the range of the plant was even bigger than scientists initially thought it was. There are still lots of questions to be answered about the woolly devil, but one thing we do know for sure is that even in our most studied, most visited natural spaces, there are still discoveries to be made, and questions to be answered. Like how many other plants, insects, mollusks, fungi, and even more still remain undocumented? And how many might vanish before we even know they exist? There is still hope though, because every observation shared on iNaturalist brings us closer to answering these kinds of questions. And the more community scientists we have out there looking both up and down, the better.
So I just love that little video. It's totally amazing to me that like in a national park in the United States that are so visited and so well studied, that there are still undescribed species in them, which is true about every place in the world, especially places that are less studied and less well visited as well. So you never know, like you might make an observation that, you know, makes the difference like this. Sometimes even when species have been described by science, we also have no evidence of them actually alive. Sometimes we only have like drawings and a description, or like dead museum specimens when a species was described a long time ago. So just another kind of cool example of how individual observations can make a difference. This limpet was recently photographed in Myanmar, actually just photographed like 3 weeks ago in Myanmar. An identifier based in the United States who has taught herself how to identify limpets, she identified it. And she noted that this was the first known photograph of this species alive, that previously we had only had dead museum specimens of this species. So now this observation is in this project on iNaturalist, and this project is 4 first known photographs of living specimens, which is cool. And if you want to go visit that project, here's that project. Amazingly, there are over 10,000 species in this project. So we have added the first evidence of living organisms for over 10,000 species. And this is just people going out, documenting the species they see around them as well. So just another cool example of how individual observations can make a difference for science. So moving on from like individual contributions, another way iNaturalist supports biodiversity science, and kind of the most common way, probably the most important way, is that we are the largest data set currently of global biodiversity. And this is hugely important for understanding where species are right now and how that's changing with climate change and habitat loss. So currently there are over 280 million observations around the world on iNaturalist. These observations are of over 540,000 species, which is about 25% of all known species in the world. And these observations have been made by almost 4 million people. All the data on iNaturalist are free to download. And like I mentioned before as well, we also share research grade observations with other data sets, databases, most importantly, GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. Because it's the largest data set of global biodiversity, the iNaturalist data set is used extensively in scientific research. There were over 1,000 studies published just last year using iNaturalist data, and there's been more than 6,800 studies total published using iNat data that we know of. Recently, there was an article published in just July of 2025, so pretty recently in Bioscience. And the article is titled iNaturalist Accelerates Biodiversity Research. And this was a cool study that basically was kind of doing a meta-analysis. They looked at like a whole bunch of papers that have been published using iNaturalist data, and they were trying to kind of categorize the way that iNaturalist data is advancing science. And so there were kind of four main uses that were kind of highlighted in this study. The first one is just being able to map species, so tracking where species occur, documenting range expansions, tracking non-native species that are showing up in novel places, and building species lists for places as well. So being able just to map nature is one of the main uses of iNaturalist data. Studying biology and behavior of species is really cool too. So this is things like looking at habitat preference or color variation in species, or species interactions like plants and pollinators, or like things eating other things, breeding behavior. And this is a really cool use of iNaturalist data because this is more than just the data itself. This is about the photographs on iNaturalist, right? So if you're looking at things like color variation or interactions of species together, you're actually using the photographs on iNaturalist rather than just the data point of a species and where it occurred. So that's a pretty cool use of iNaturalist data as well. One of the third kind of big categories is understanding effects of climate change on species and places. So looking at range shifts and range expansions of species, habitat suitability, other environmental impacts due to climate change as well. And the fourth, which I've talked a little bit about as well, is finding new species. So this is when those individual observations are important. Like I mentioned before, like people documenting species that have not yet been described by science is kind of one of the other main uses of iNaturalist data. And the authors noted how iNaturalist supports research like across disciplines because it's global, so you can contribute observations from anywhere in the world, and how it's because it's for all species. It's not limited to just certain groups of organisms. It's for evidence of any living thing, which basically makes it useful across a really wide range of studies and disciplines. And the authors also noted how all these data are collected just by people everywhere, that this community collected data is making a huge impact for understanding and protecting nature. And this is just something that anyone can do. Anyone can contribute to science just by going out and having an encounter with nature, local nature in your area, taking a photograph and uploading it to iNaturalist is a really important way that people can contribute to science. And this paper was really emphasizing all the different ways that those observations are contributing to science. Moving into a little bit more into conservation, how iNaturalist data is helping to protect species and places. One of the things is that we have tools and resources that we've made with iNaturalist data to help people make more informed conservation decisions. So for example, we have free range maps for over 100,000 species. And those range maps are free to download. You could download individual range maps for individual species, or you can download like entire groups of range maps, like all the reptiles in the world. You can download all of those together to get these range maps that have been built based on iNaturalist observations. When you have so many people out looking for and documenting species, like I said, over 4 million people are part of the iNaturalist community right now and making observations, that means that iNaturalist is usually the place that has the most current information about rare species and where they are. And so those data are often really used to advocate for protections for those species or the places that they occur in as well. And then also iNaturalist is used by governments and conservation organizations almost like an early warning system for invasive species. So again, when you have so many people out looking for and documenting species, new records of invasive species often show up first on iNaturalist. This is just one example, this elm zigzag sawfly, which is native to kind of Asia and Europe, and it was been introduced to the East Coast of the United States and has kind of been spreading from there. This particular observation was the first record of it in Minnesota that was found on this iNaturalist observation. So by tracking species of concern on iNaturalist, these governments and conservation organizations, they can respond rapidly, and you can often remove these species before they become established and become a problem. So like early detection of invasive species is another important use of iNaturalist data for conservation. So I really just want to emphasize that like using iNaturalist is easy. It teaches you more about nature while also helping to protect nature. And every observation is important, whether it's something rare, like this really beautiful melanistic serval that was seen in Kenya, or even if it's something more common, like the pigeons that you can see in our cities, like this observation from Italy. Like every observation is important because it could be helping you get to know your non-human neighbors. It could be helping you build your knowledge and your confidence to make a difference in your community. Your observation could be used tomorrow to help someone make a decision, a conservation decision about a species or a place near you. Or your observation could be used in like 5 years or 10 years to answer a scientific question about how species and places are changing. Like, you really never know. Every observation is important. And so you should never worry about going out and making observations and worry about what you're making observations of. Like, every observation is important. So kind of moving on from the observing side of iNaturalist, especially if you've already been using iNaturalist and you already have been making observations, I really wanted to talk about other contributions you can also make on iNaturalist. And I'm just going to kind of touch on this quickly. Most people who join iNaturalist only ever make observations. We have about 4 million people who've contributed observations and only about 400,000 people that have contributed identifications. But so the next step of like leveling up your iNaturalist use is helping with identifying. And this is also something that anybody can do. And there's also some little data stewardship tips you can also do as well. So why identify on iNaturalist? Adding IDs helps other people. It's just nice to help other folks, but it also improves the data quality on iNaturalist and makes the data set overall more useful for science and conservation. Just like how anybody can make observations, anyone can help with identifications on iNaturalist. We respect the fact that everybody has knowledge to share, that a lot of people out there in the world who aren't necessarily experts have taught themselves a lot about species and places as well. And so everybody is allowed to help with identifications, and there are things that everybody can do to help in this process as well. Plus, it's also just a really nice way to give back to the iNaturalist community. If you've ever appreciated someone coming in and like leaving you an identification on one of your observations or leaving you a comment, this is just a really nice way to give back and kind of continue that cycle, help the iNaturalist community as well. So before I get into just kind of how to identify, there are a few best practices around identifying. One is that you really should only add IDs that you're sure of. So like if someone asked you, you can like point to the evidence, like so you can like show the photo and the information that you know that leads you to that identification. If there are things that you're looking at and you don't know how to ID them, or you're not 100% sure or like relatively sure about the species, it's totally okay to skip IDing things. You don't have to ID everything. You should only also add IDs at the taxonomic level the evidence supports. Like, so for example, if someone like uploads a photo and they swear it's a red-tailed hawk and they ID'd it as a red-tailed hawk, but it's like a super blurry, far away photo and you're looking at that and you're like, I can tell that's a hawk, but I can't tell it's a red-tailed hawk. You should only ID it then at that point, like 2 hawks, you know? You shouldn't ID it farther than the evidence supports of that photo. So only ID things to the level that the evidence supports it at. And then finally, IDing really is easiest on the iNaturalist website, iNaturalist.org, where you can use the identify page, which is a page that we've made to help kind of in the identification process, make it easier for identifying, and where you can also see the larger images. You can ID on your phone. It's just much easier to do it on the website itself. Even if you're not an expert, you can 100% help with identifying. And this is what I'm going to focus on here, like easy ways that non-experts can help identifying on iNaturalist. And 2 of the most important ways that anyone can help with identifications or help with data stewardship on iNaturalist is identifying unknown observations and marking observations as captive and cultivated. On the iNaturalist website, if you're ready to go and work on identifications, on the header of the website, there's like just a button that says identify. So you click that, and this takes you to the identify page. And the identify page, it's going to default to showing you all the observations on iNaturalist that still need an identification. They're not research grade yet, and it will show you all of them when you first go to the identify page. But on the identify page, you can, we have a set of filters that you can use. And so this is where you would filter for unknown observations. So what are unknown observations? So these are observations that were uploaded with no identification at all. So someone took a photo, they didn't use our suggestions, they didn't type anything in, they literally just took the photo and uploaded it to iNaturalist. So that means it has no ID on it at all. It comes in literally saying unknown. So when you filter for unknowns, you open up that little filters button on the identify page, and there's this little dashed line leaf with the question mark inside of it. And if you click that, it's going to show you all the unknown observations on iNaturalist. So before, where it was showing you everything that needed identifications, now it's only showing you things that are labeled as unknown. So once you've filtered for unknowns, you can click on one of those thumbnails to open up that observation. In that observation, you click Add ID to open up the identification field. And all you have to do is to be able to categorize unknown observations into a group. Whatever taxonomic level that you're sure of is really, really useful. You know, you could say that this is a bird, or you can say that this is a plant, or you can say, I know this is an insect, or you can be like, I know this is an ant. Whatever level you can tell is super helpful. So in this example here, I opened up this observations. I know very little about mushrooms. I like going and looking at them. I like making observations of them. I have not yet learned how to identify them. But I know that for sure that this is in kingdom fungi. So that's what I ID'd it at. I literally put it at the highest taxonomic level. I said, this is, you know, it's kingdom fungi. But now people who know their fungus can find this observation. So other people who are using the identify page who are like, I know how to identify fungus. And so they type in fungus, they would not have seen this observation because it was unknown. But now that I have classified it as fungus, the people who now know their fungus can see this observation, and they basically can move on to the next step. I've passed the baton. Someone else can identify it down to a lower level now. So going in and adding even super high level identifications to unknown observations is hugely important and is something that everybody can do. You can always skip ones that you're not sure of, but if you can say, I know this is a plant, I know this is a reptile, I know this is an insect, I know this is a mushroom or a fungus, that is super helpful and something anybody can do. I do want to point out quickly that if you do have expertise in particular groups of organisms, you can also filter by those at any taxonomic level. So you can filter by taxa, you can also filter by place, you can combine those filters together as well. So for example, if I could identify plants in California, I could filter by plants and by California to just see all the observations of plants that need ID. Or I could pick like Asteraceae of California. Like if I know my sunflowers and daisies and related flowers, I could filter by those in California as well. And it's similar, just like with my example of IDing unknowns, you click on a thumbnail to bring up the observation view. You use the buttons to add IDs. You can add comments. You can agree with the current identification as well. So this is, if you do have some expertise, use those filters as well to kind of get to the groups of organisms that you know. But anyone can help with unknowns, and all you got to do is press that little dashed line leaf with a question mark inside of it to get to those unknown observations. And then finally, just another really quick thing that you can do while you're working on identifications is help us clean up iNaturalist data by marking observations as captive and cultivated. There's lots of ways you can help with data stewardship, but marking observations as captive and cultivated is one of the easiest things that you can do. So captive and cultivated organisms, they're observations that are clearly cultivated plants. So these are plants that have been planted by humans. You might see them in a pot. You might see them clearly in a garden that's being taken care of. And then captive animals are animals that are pets, animals in a zoo, animals in an aquarium, domesticated animals like cows or goats or horses or things like that. So as you're going through observations on the identify page, there's just a spot to mark them as captive and cultivated just below the photo. So you can see in this example here, I was going through, I saw this potted plant. I was like, okay, this is clearly a cultivated plant. So all you have to do is click that little button that says captive cultivated under the photo, and it marks it as captive and cultivated. You can also just click X on your keyboard that also marks it as captive and cultivated. So this is just an easy thing that you can keep an eye out for as you're going through observations that you're identifying. If you see something that's clearly captive and cultivated, mark it as such. And then what we do is we just don't share observations, captive and cultivated observations with other databases like GBIF. So this just helps us in like the data we share with other databases, and it also just like makes our data more accurate, that this thing is not occurring by itself in the wild. Someone has planted it there and is taking care of it. So just to emphasize, adding identifications and helping with data stewardship is something that anybody can help with. It really improves the iNaturalist data set, and it's also a really nice way just to give back to the community. And like I said, like only 10% of the people on iNaturalist have ever helped to make an identification. So any contributions you make to identifications are hugely appreciated. And we really would thank, if you, after this, if you're like, I'm going to go make some identifications, I will say thank you right now for that, because we definitely appreciate anyone who helps with identifications on iNaturalist. So with that, I will wrap up my talk. I'll say thank you. If you want to go visit the website, we're iNaturalist.org. I am Kestrel on iNaturalist. You can find me there. You can reach out to me and message me on iNaturalist using finding my username. And if you have not yet downloaded iNaturalist on your phone, you can use this QR code right now to get iNaturalist on your phone. So you can go out and start making observations. But thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Alison. I think we should give a couple of seconds for this to stay on screen because I think this is the most important slide.
Yeah, download iNaturalist, everybody.
And in the meantime, we have a very interesting message in the chat section, and it truly reflects, like what even I wanted to say. So this message from Deepak, he says, Alison, thank you. Your energy is so amazing that I don't feel it's almost 11 p.m. in India. So his question is, how much of data is specific to India, as in how many users in India are contributing? I am part of a team and we are into regenerative agriculture, and for us, biodiversity aspects are critical as one of our important offering to permaculture farm design for IPM. Not only can we contribute, but we can also look at bringing in more farmers, as I can assist them with invasive species attack their crops. You want to answer that, Alison?
Yeah, let me stop sharing this. And I don't know off the top of my head, but let's go look at it right now. I mean, Ram, you might know, but I figured I can show people that it's actually really easy to get that information. So I'm just going to share this desktop right here. Here's the iNaturalist website right now. Up here, I'm just going to search India. And I'm going to view the observations. And what this is doing is it's just filtering all the observations in the world now to just observations in India. And what this tells me is that there are 54,000 people in India who've made observations and are contributing. And there's over 4 million observations in India of over 41,000 species. So this is how you get this information. You can just go to our Explore page and you can just filter if you want to look at particular places or particular species. This is, again, like I said, you can explore all the observations on iNaturalist. So this is just an easy way if you want to look at a particular country. You can see how many people are making observations there. And Ram has done a great job about getting more people making observations in India as well.
Yes. So, and there are a couple of programs I think I can talk about. So maybe I should start showing my screen to quickly demonstrate or just show a few of the things which we have been doing. So, as one of the examples, what Alison was also saying about the kind of activities or projects which people do on iNaturalist. So this is one example. As you can see, this was the IUCN World Conservation Congress project. So this was one of the projects which was run by the IUCN Citizen Science Task Force, which I am part of as well. So you can see this between the duration of 9th till 15th of October, all the observations from worldwide were contributed and collected in this project. And you can see within that period of like less than a week's time, we can see 80,000 species were uploaded on iNaturalist. So this is one of the examples of how this is working. Now, as it was also told that you can also start your own projects and you can set any of the criteria for your project. So this is another example of one of the activities which we have initiated from the Citizen Science Global Partnership. So this is, we named it Nairobi Biodiversity Challenge, and UNIA 7, this is the 7th session for the United Nations Environment Assembly. So at this particular time, what we are going to do is, in the location Nairobi, anyone contributing any data, any observations between these days, December 1st to 12th, will be contributed for this particular project. So this is what it's showing on the map. So if you are in Nairobi, if you are in Kenya during this period of time, if you upload any of the observations, this will be shown here. While we are talking about India, I think I should also show you what the City Nation Challenge program is, because we are going to start working on the City Nation Challenge very soon. And this is not only for India, this kind of basically for everyone. So one of the ways how you can contribute to iNaturalist or to this particular, to these programs is by participating in the BioBlitz. And City Nation Challenge is one of the BioBlitz which happened in the last weekend of April. So in the next year, 2026, on the last weekend of April, we'll have City Nation Challenge again. I just wanted to show you what India did, just last year in 2024. So you can see in the the duration of 4 days, April 26, 27, 28, and 29, around 2,700 people contributed and they documented 7,000, more than 7,000 species and uploaded more than 1,51,000 observations. And this is the map. You can see how many cities were contributing during this particular period. So this is one of the opportunities. Right now, the registrations for the cities is ongoing. So if you want to represent your city for CNC next year, you can see if your city is not already registered, you can register your city. And then once the city's registrations are done, we will inform everyone about registering your yourself as a participant, individual participant. Okay, any other questions? I am going to change the settings so that anyone can unmute themselves. Yes. So you should be able to unmute yourself now. If you have any questions, you can unmute and ask. Okay. Thank you, Akanksha, for pointing out the voice. I will fix the setting now.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Yes. Any questions from anyone? Okay. So Meg says in the chat. Yes, please go ahead.
I have one doubt. Yeah. So actually, I'm just new to iNat, and I have been documenting. Like we started the kind of citizen science here in Pune, in India. So we have recorded some in the duration of 5 months. We did a recording of 3,500 trees around our rivers. Okay. So similar activity I want to do. Means it was on another platform. It was an EpiCollect, but a similar activity we want to do in iNat. Means starting this weekend. So I have created a project, but I am not able to select the particular location for that project. So is there anything that I'm missing out there? Because I'm not getting the option to select the area.
Yeah. Alison, you want to talk about places not on iNaturalist?
Yeah. So first of all, you just want to make sure that you're making a collection project instead of an umbrella project. Because if you're not even seeing the option to pick a location, it might just be the wrong kind of project. If you are seeing an option to pick a location, but you're not finding the location that you're interested in gathering observations from, you can upload new places to iNaturalist. You have to have at least 50 verifiable observations to do that. But we have in the community tab, or actually in the more tab, we have this tab called places. I'll put the link in the chat here. And this is where you can create a new place. So you just have to have a KML boundary already downloaded for it. And then you can upload it in this places page to iNaturalist and you give it a name. And then once you upload it to iNaturalist, then it'll be available to pick as a place in a project. So yeah, if you can't find the place that you're already using that you want to use, you have the ability to upload places as well.
Okay. Then I think I am missing on the criteria that I don't have 50 verifiable observations yet. So I let me just finish that thing first, and then I'll again recheck this places thing. Thank you, team. Yeah.
Okay. Meg says in the chat that wonderful presentation. I'm curious if the majority of the researchers using iNaturalist data were involved in creating project for a specific purpose, or if most researchers are using the data already collected.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say probably more people are using the data that's already collected on iNaturalist, especially because it's part of GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. And so GBIF GBIF is a database of species occurrence records. So it has iNaturalist data, but it also has like historic museum specimen data are in GBIF, and like eBird data are in GBIF. So a lot of researchers, when they're asking like big questions about species globally, they'll go to GBIF to download data to answer those questions. And so I'm guessing most researchers are probably interacting with iNaturalist data kind of on just the already collected side. But we do have a ton of I mean, there's, I think there's like 200,000 projects on iNaturalist. There are a ton of examples of projects of researchers who have very specific questions that they're trying to get people to gather more data around. There are data gaps still on iNaturalist, and so a lot of times researchers are asking people to help like fill those gaps or collect very particular like types of species in particular places, observations, things like that. And a lot of projects on iNaturalist are also run by conservation organizations. So places that want to build species lists for particular places or be able to map species in places that they manage as well. So yes, I'd say most people are probably using the data that's already collected, but we do have a lot of examples of research questions and especially conservation questions that are trying to be answered using iNaturalist with projects.
Yes, and and currently in India we are using most of the new projects basically to educate more people about iNaturalist and to get more people interested either in the naturalist world or in one of any of the missions people are working on. For example, in India recently we have one specific group working on tiger beetles. So we started a tiger beetle watch project, and then when we talked about iNaturalist and the Tiger Beetle Watch, so many new people started uploading observations on iNaturalist. So while the projects while we start new projects, those might not be directly used by researchers, but those are indirectly helping us get more people, more observations, more species documented on iNaturalist, which are eventually being used by scientists. Okay, Surya, you can unmute yourself and ask question.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Alison, for this amazing session. So I have a question. So I used to be a Wikipedian, like when I was in college, like a decade ago. I used to write a lot of articles, and I used to go for these photo walks and upload a lot of photos to Wikimedia, and which is free to use on all the projects under Creative Commons license. And now, like after like it's very low my contribution over there now, but I still want my photographs that I upload on iNaturalist to be available on Wikimedia Commons somehow. And I did change the settings on the app to ensure my photos are public domain. So I've given the license as CC0. So, but is there any particular process that I need to do to ensure that my photographs are available on Wikimedia server as well? Like, uh, apart from what I already did, which is just changing all the licensing for my photographs and anything that I upload on iNaturalist, I already changed it to CC0. Is there anything else that I should do so that it's available for Wikimedians as well?
No, I mean that's great that you changed your photo licensing. Just for folks that aren't aware, there's two different licensings on iNaturalist. You can license your photo, and you can also license the data itself. And if you want people to be able to use your photo on things like Wikimedia or like have those photos show up on Wikipedia, you need to have at least CC BY or CC0, which are like the two least restrictive licensing. Once you've marked it one of those things, generally it's folks that are doing the editing on Wikimedia that then go find those photos on iNaturalist and bring them into Wikimedia and associate them with Wikipedia articles as well. So you don't have to do anything else. I have every once in a while had people like message me and be like, oh, we found this photo of yours and it's not CC BY yet. Like, can you make it CC BY so we can pull it over into Wikimedia? And so I'll go and like change licensing on individual photos, which you can do as well. But yeah, there's nothing special that you have to do. I mean, you're welcome to also like associate your photos in Wikimedia and with Wikipedia articles, but usually it's folks that are doing the editing will come to iNaturalist, find those photos and pull them over there. So as long as the licensing is available, that's all you have to do.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And also, while we are on that particular topic, I want to let you know that in India we specifically have one WhatsApp group for people who are interested in biodiversity and also on Wikipedia. So we have around 150 people in that WhatsApp group, and that group is very active. So these people are also creating new Wikipedia pages for let's say new species or the species for which we don't have the Wikipedia pages yet. So Surya, if you're interested, you can write me an email and I'll be happy to add you in that group.
Yeah, but good evening, and Ram, and thank you always. And Alison, it was a very interesting session. And here in India, in Northeast, Especially, I would like to say that this year we had this BioBliss for our Wild Wisdom Global Challenge. And the school children were taken out to nature for, this is a beautiful platform because they came to know and observe species and uploaded their findings, which is a new learning and really connect to nature. So but we have little gaps here because in our India schools they are not allowed to take the mobiles. So that was little hindrance because they have to depend on the teachers to upload it at times. So but then we will try to find out ways, but at least Ram, thank you for giving this an opportunity, and this city nature challenge was the start that we did in 2024, and 25 also went on very well. So with this we started with BioBliss, and with your session, I think so if we can share some of the informations that Alison has given today to in the WhatsApp group of our schools, it'll be easier for this year's, coming year City Nature Challenge. So that is my suggestion to you, Ram. Yeah, thank you.
I'll also throw the link to our resources page in the chat. So a lot of the slides that I presented today are already available on our resources page.
Okay,
And
okay.
yeah, and you're
Yeah,
welcome.
right.
There's a bunch of presentations you can download and use, and you can change them,
Surely,
translate
surely.
them. Yeah.
Thank you.
And while we are on the topic of the problem with schools not allowing the mobile phones, of course that's definitely one of the things we have to figure out how to get around it. And yeah, Alison, just for your information, Archita is one of the coordinators for the Worldwide Fund for Nature WWF in India. And WWF is very actively using iNaturalist nowadays for many of their programs. In fact, I started my City Nature Challenge because of Farida Champal, who is the state director for Hyderabad, this
Mhm.
place, Hyderabad for WWF India. And I wanted to show you that in India in 2024, for example, this page which was open here, if you see the second city which ranks second, this is named as Nanak Mata. And if I go to that particular page, you can see this is actually just one school, the students of Nanak Mata Public School. So this is just one particular school, and the students from this school have left all these other cities behind. So this very inspiring story
Wow.
in India where how the students of this one school are doing such an amazing job. Deepak, you can unmute and
Hi, Alison. Thank you. Like I already mentioned, your energy is just brushes off, and it's quite late in India, so it's almost 11:30 p.m. My question is something so amazing, a database like this. How is it funded? Because it's free for a user, right? So I just want to know, like, how you'll raise funds to, because server space and all is like crazily, it's crazy kind of server space you need and stuff like that.
Yeah. So iNaturalist is a nonprofit, so we function just like a nonprofit. So we get donations. People give us small dollar donations. We have major donors. We get grants and go after grants as well. And because we're a nonprofit, we also get a lot of donations from corporations that will donate server space to us, or being able to use some of their resources as well. So a lot of our server space is actually donated to us for free, which is really nice as well. But yeah, we're totally a nonprofit. We are committed to always staying free for users, and staying a nonprofit. So we're basically we fundraise to make iNaturalist work.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm.
okay. So I think if there are no more questions, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Alison for being such a wonderful speaker. Your energy, as others have said, is really it really helps us to stay motivated and be even charged up to do more. And also many thanks to all the participants. we had more than 120 people who registered for this session, but unfortunately what we are seeing is whenever we are doing sessions late in the night, especially from the Asian side, we are getting very less participants live, but we do have people who watch the sessions later and then they ask if they have any questions. So this session is currently being live streamed on our YouTube channel, and I'll also send an email to all the people after I do the processing of the recording. I'll send it to them, and if there are any more questions, I'll definitely come back to you, Alison. And to all the participants, if you want to discuss anything with me, if you want to block my time, I have given a link of my calendar here. So feel free to schedule a small meeting with me. I also given my email ID earlier on the chat section, so you can also write me an email if you have anything else. So thank you very much, Alishan, and thank you all the participants for staying here for the session. And we'll be sharing more information with you and looking forward for more contributions on iNaturalist from you all. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Ram,
Thanks,
if you can hear me, I just have a thing to add.
Sure.
You chose a wrong day. See, for Alison, it is Friday morning. Here it is Friday evening. And most of the people who are into biodiversity are at an age group where they'll probably partying on a Friday and Saturday. So, okay, so the day choice of the day is what matters, even if it's late. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm just like, it's just, I'm just being funny. So that's okay.
Sure.
I am 51. I'd rather be reading at home. So I wouldn't expect a 25 or 30-year-old to be doing that on a Friday night, you know.
But I will say, also thanks to all the amazing participants like, Surya and Deepak and you all, because your energy is also so high. So that we need to match it with Alison, and we really need participants like you.
Son, you go, girl. Awesome you are. We loved your energy.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.
Thanks. Very lovely session. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.